in addition to making these micro budget movies that Whit has actually been kind enough to even offer to fund, and I have told him, oh no, you're going to lose money. I don't want to hurt our friendship, but I may take you up on that someday. I work for Roy Engelbrecht Promotions still, doing social media and a bunch of other stuff. So you're working for Roy, you're doing the matchmaking, and then you leave, and then do you go to the PBC then? Like, how'd the PBC happen?
Yeah, the PBC. I'm trying to remember how I think it was through my connection to Tom Brown. I think I started talking to Tom Brown kind of later, like not until like maybe 05 or 06, and it was just maybe I called the office and introduced myself to Tom. I didn't make a fight for Tom until 2013 or 2014. Tom was one of these guys. He's a great guy, and he's a great boxing guy. And I think he wants to know that you've been in the business for 10 years. Again, you want people that, it's like a chain, and like, if you have a new guy that's not really serious about being in boxing, they can just wreck you and disappear. So I think I'm just guessing in Tom's view that he would typically rather deal with somebody that's been around and plans on being around for a while. So at that point, he started allowing me to make a few fights here and there. And over time, I was making fights for the PBC from the very beginning, whether it be, if you recall, they were going through Goldenboy in the beginning. It was more.
Oh, and is that how the whole thing with Goldenboy kind of happened with Richard Schaefer of thing, where like Richard Schaefer then got fired from Goldenboy because he was sort of funneling the Goldenboy fighters to the PBC?
I think that had something to do with it. I don't know the actual specifics of it.
Yeah, neither do I.
I would list the fighters from Goldenboy and to fights to make, and at some point they stopped being Goldenboy fighters and they started being PBC fighters. And so I saw the change start happening, and I was matching I think Keith Thurman was with Goldenboy from the very beginning, but there were hardcore Al Heyman fighters that suddenly I was matching. And so I really have been making PBC fights from the very beginning.
And some of those, correct me if I'm wrong, I used to broadcast and like cover as part of the Fight Club OC shows, because they would do fights on Roy's shows to build up their record.
That's
right?
When that era, we're talking about probably 2015, 16. ABC was throwing a lot of spaghetti against the wall to see what would stick with a variety of fighters. And so I would say, would be the second and third level talent would end up on Roy's shows, where especially guys from California were like, all right, let's shoot them a 6-round fight or an 8-round fight and see what becomes of them. And so I
remember those shows. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I remember those shows. You were doing them, and I remember, and I think Chuck was doing them, and suddenly the shows went from having 5 or 6 fights to having like 9. Like you guys were doing your job, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, matching all those fights, but it was a lot easier making fights 10 years ago, I think, than now.
Why do you say
the game is changing in real time. As we sit here talking right now, I think this boxing game is in a position right now where it's changing it's moving in some direction. I don't know exactly where it's heading, but it's every week new revelation. Like, now obviously you're hearing about this whole Dana White and this TKO and the Sheik.
What is your thought on that?
Here's my thought, and I've given it some thought because I thought we might talk about it today. And I've been giving it thought as the last week has gone on. I think that it's going to be very difficult for them to get traction. Now, I understand they're out there signing people like maniacs right now. They can't be signing high-level talent. They might be signing B-level talent and C-level talent. I've heard they have 100 guys under contract already.
Why do you, I'm going to pose a question as an answer. Do you say they can't be signing the high-level talent because those guys are already locked up with the major promoters? And
Exactly. So these guys, the real good ones, the high-end guys are already tied up. They're going out and getting B and C level guys. I don't know what the game plan for that is. I think they're just trying to get as many. Now, it's going to have a nasty spillover effect for the top ranks and the PBCs of the world. I should preface this by saying one thing for your audience to understand, and any boxing fan or fight fan, maybe UFC is different, but there's this idea that there's fighters like are just caged lions that are just dying to fight each other. I can assure you that's not the case. Guys are so cagey in who they will fight and won't fight, and they want top dollar, which I don't blame them for that. And they're very cognizant of what the market is like at any given moment so that they can maximize what they can make on every fight. But, especially the young kids that are coming up that are inside of 10 fights, there's guys that can't fight at all that won't fight anybody, thinking that there's some pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if they keep fighting nobodies and building up their resume. You're all going to end up you're going to have to win a fight of note to be a real prospect. You can't beat 15 stiffs in a row and be 15. You might fool your friends on Facebook or Instagram, but you're not fooling a boxing guy. And suddenly, yeah.
Well, and I'm saying you bring up, that point, and you bring up the whole idea of the gaining traction for that TKO company. They're going to have to build up those B and C level fighters, and that takes time. And there's so much more to it today. And the whole idea with like the sanctioning bodies and stuff like that. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, even if they do end up doing well and it becomes like the UFC, correct me if I'm wrong, there's still going to be a gazillion, like not a gazillion, but there's still going to be other promotional companies out there that are doing fights that are not part of it.
Yeah. Unless they want to start going around and buying people out and there's a price for everything. I think some people might relent and actually pay the money, pay them to get rid of what they have in their stable or whatever. They might just do it. But here's the other big part that people don't seem to understand, or how could they understand? But some of the toughest things about the fight game right now are the actual boxing commissions. So if you're, and I'm just going to be really brutal with this, I'm going to come across as a prick, but I don't care. So here's me, a guy that's 20 something years as a matchmaker, and some punk at some commission is going to tell me what fight I can and can't make. I get furious. Somebody that, maybe you were a cop or maybe you worked for the FBI. You're a punk as far as I'm concerned. You're going to tell me that, if I tell you, like, I'm going to give you an example of a fight I'm trying to make right now. A 2-0, 18, state. I'm just going to say it's a state in Nevada, and these commissions are tough, and they think they're protecting fighters, but they're not. Okay. I got a 2-0 kid, 18 years old, 122 pounds, nothing special, just a guy. And I got another tough kid, 1-3 out of Texas. And I'm trying to make a 4-round fight. This is a perfectly good fight. The 1-3 kid, never been down, never been stopped. And in his 3 losses, he won rounds, and all his, we're talking about against a kid that's 2-0 with 1 knockout. They won't let me put the fight on. So
why?
They say it's a mismatch. It's just the craziest thing I've ever seen. So it's getting to this level where the art of matchmaking is there is no art to it anymore. What I am now is a glorified booking agent. I could put on a fight if the commission says, okay, you can put that fight on. But here's the thing. If you look back at any serious ring injuries, it's when the damn guys are matched exactly perfectly.